The New York Mets have had a very strong first half of their season, including a very impressive 58-35 record so far this year. That's 23 games over 500 with a 624 winning percentage as they lead the NL East by at least 2.5 games over the Atlanta Braves and 8.5 games over the Philadelphia Phillies. And they rank second right now in the National League behind the Dodgers in terms of winning percentage and wins to losses. But the New York Mets still have to go in the second half season maintaining their great baseball play, make a couple of moves at the trade deadline, and hopefully they're going to be able to stay in the division lead, not collapse, and be able to get ready for the playoffs when it comes to October. What's going on, everybody? This is NYG Jeffy T 3285, and I'm here with a quick video on the expectations and things I'd like to see the New York Mets do in the second half of the season. And of course, the second half of the season, the biggest question right now, of course, which has been one of the biggest questions since the season started, and that's the health and status of the Mets starting pitcher and their ace, Jacob deGrom, who recently just pitched a couple of bullpen sessions the past few days, but he was dealing with a little bit of soreness yesterday, and his original start was pushed back until tomorrow instead of yesterday. So, Jacob deGrom might not be back exactly on the date he was hoping for right after the All-Star break, but unless this soreness that he's been dealing with in his shoulder persists, he should still be back in relative time. And him along with Max Scherzer and the rest of that starting rotation are going to be key for the New York Mets going forward, as they're going to need a guy like Jacob deGrom to be able to anchor that rotation going forward, because while guys like Max Scherzer has been incredible so far, and guys like Carlos Carrasco, David Peterson, and Taijuan Walker have been pitching a lot better lately, it's still very risky to put your hands into these guys and hope that they can continue their great play going into the second half of the season, because they've had moments where they've either been injured or they've had erratic starting pitching, including last year where Taijuan Walker had a very, very big drop-off in the second half of his season. David Peterson in his rookie year was very erratic, and Carlos Carrasco was dealing with injuries, as well as he had some up-and-down starts too. So you're going to have to get Jacob deGrom back, and hopefully he's going to be able to still be able to provide that ace-like pitching for your team, as well as Max Scherzer, and that's going to be one of the keys. The second half, another one thing that's going to happen is that the New York Mets have to make sure their bats don't slump at all too. And one of the things they need to do before the trade deadline is add at least one more impact bat to this lineup. As well, you still have guys like Jeff McNeil, J.D. Davis, Eduardo Escobar, Dom Smith, Francisco Lindor, and Brandon Nimmo, and Starling Marte, Mike Canna, to name a few. These guys have been good, solid. These guys have been very good hitters, but none of them have really provided the extreme power, besides Pete Alonso, who's having an MVP season so far for the New York Mets, have really been a consistent power threat in the middle of that lineup. So you're going to have to try to add a guy in the middle of that lineup to try to provide more of a power and try to scare off the opposing pitchers, try to pitch around that guy, and it will give more looks for Alonso. So I think they definitely need in the second half of the season to add another impact bat to the lineup. And I also believe they're going to have to add some more impact bullpen help, because their bullpen has been one of the shakiest parts of their team outside of Edwin Diaz. They haven't really gotten anything from their bullpen. Trevor May's been injured, Seth Lugo's been very inconsistent, and the rest of the guys have been in and out of the rotation. They've been very inconsistent overall. So some guys I would like to see the Mets be able to target in the second half of the season in terms of trades. I would like to see them maybe go after a Daniel Bard. I'd like to see them maybe go after a David Robertson, some veterans that would provide some more solid bullpen help to the middle, a Gregory Soto, a Jorge Lopez, and maybe even bring back some guys that were previous Mets, like they're one of their biggest prospects at the time, Michael Fulmer on Detroit, as well as Paul Sewald from Seattle. Just get some more bullpen help for this New York Mets team, because that can't be the reason why this team struggles, and it's one of the reasons why this team self-destructed the past couple of years, albeit besides the injuries and the starting pitching and the hit bats all of a sudden going cold. But the bullpen has been one of the biggest sore spots of this New York Mets team for the past few years, and they've melted when it comes to those big-time saves that you need. And then they have to make sure that they shore up that bullpen going into the second half of the season, because you cannot afford for this bullpen to be another reason why this Mets team either doesn't win the division and Please, I hope it doesn't happen, but they don't make the playoffs, which I still think they're have a very comfortable lead right now, but you never know. It is Major League Baseball, and we have seen teams in the past collapse with big-time leads before. The New York Mets did it in back-to-back years in 2007 and 2008 when they were leading the division, and they ended up collapsing at the end of the season, including back-to-back years where they lost series at the end of the season to the Marlins and pretty much ended them at that time. So the New York Mets have to be able to make some moves at the deadline, and they have to make sure that those bats stay consistent, the starting pitching stays healthy, and they're going to be able to get their two aces back and healthy and make sure they stay in the rotation. Scherzer's been incredible since he's come back so far. He's pitching to an under 1 ERA in his first couple of starts since he's been back, and Jacob deGrom is on the cusp of returning back to the rotation. But you need these two guys to stay healthy and be able to provide this team with the type of starting pitching that will lead the Mets back to the postseason and go on a long postseason run, maybe as a possible World Series appearance. And you need the bats to wake up. And I'm talking about the Mets feel comfortable with the bats they have in their lineup right now, which most Met fans don't. We all feel like that they should add at least another bat to that lineup, unless you want to bring up some of the prospects from the minor leagues, including Francisco Alvarez or Brendan Beatty or Mark Vientos. But I still believe they need to add an impact bat, like a Juan Soto who's being floated out there. He's on the trade rumors right now, a CJ Cron, or maybe even a guy like Trey Mancini, just another bat that will scare the opposing pitchers and the opposing managers to pitch around these guys, to give Pete Alonso, Francisco Lindor, Jeff McNeil, and some of the other better Mets hitters better pitches to hit. The Mets need to make some additions in the second half of the season. They have to improve that bullpen, which is by far the weakest part of their team right now. I believe they got good starting depth. They're getting back some of their guys from injuries. They have to stay healthy in the second half of the season. And the Mets have to make sure that they don't have cold bats. And they have to make sure that they don't collapse in the second half of the season, because that has been the marker of the New York Mets the past couple of seasons. Strong first halves, collapsing, and no playoffs in the second halves. The Mets have to change that narrative, and I believe with Buck Showalter as the manager right now, he's in a much better position than what they had last year at the manager position. So I believe that Buck Showalter will make sure that this team does not go through any type of long slumps, and they will remain consistent and go into the playoffs stronger than before. And they just have to make sure that they get Jacob deGrom, Max Scherzer back, and Max Scherzer has to continue to pitch healthy. The rest of these guys in this rotation have to just do their job, continue to pitch pretty well, and the bats have to make sure they don't go cold. The bullpen needs to be upgraded. That has had to be the biggest thing. You need to upgrade that bullpen going forward, and hopefully the New York Mets will be able to improve that bullpen in going into the rest of the season. So that's just my expectations going into the second half of the season for the New York Mets and what I hope they're going to be able to do. If you like the video, please hit the like button below. Subscribe if you haven't already to NYG Jeffy T 3285 for more breaking news updates and content surrounding the New York Mets, Brooklyn Nets, New York Giants, WWE Wrestling, as well as some food for thought. Share your comments below on your expectations for the New York Mets as we head into the second half of the season, and what you're hoping to see this team do in terms of the trade deadline, the players you're expecting to step up in the second half of the season, and what your expectations are totally for this team. And turn on the bell for notifications on the next short or video that drop for the New York Mets. So I hope everybody enjoys the rest of your Thursday. Take it easy, and let's go New York Mets. All you got to do is believe in the New York Mets.